What's up, everybody? Welcome to the LatAm Venture Capital Podcast. My name is Fernanda Sesto. I was born and raised in Uruguay, but I've been in the United States since 2019. I came to the States to study, and in May, I graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Business and a minor in Computer Science from the University of Rochester. Now I'm continuing my studies doing a master's in Business Analytics at the Simon Business School. I'm very passionate about entrepreneurship, technology, and building things. I've been involved in the startup community for about 4 years now, doing different fellowships and internships. I created this podcast because I want to empower potential investors with insights into LatAm's thriving landscape and also guide Latin American entrepreneurs through the intricacies of US VC dynamics. I interview investors and entrepreneurs to learn more about their career backgrounds, market thoughts, and provide guidance to anyone who's interested in investing in Latin America. In this episode, I talked with Magdalena Coronel. Magdalena brings more than 15 years of angel investing, venture capital, and investment banking experience both in the United States and Latin America. She started her career as a venture capital analyst with Prosperitas Capital Partners, a fund manager investing in early-stage tech companies located in Uruguay. Later, she became VentureStart Program Manager at the Regional Technology Alliance in Sacramento, California, to later transition to Director with the Institute of the Americas, where she was responsible for the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Program. In 2018, she was a member of Houlihan Lokey advising clients in valuation matters, until she joined IDB Lab as a Senior Investment Officer, leading the direct equity arm of the lab in December 2020. Magdalena assumed the role of Chief Investment Officer of IDB Lab in September of 2021, and she holds that position until now. She also co-founded a 35-member angel investor network with a focus on deal flow from Argentina, Colombia, and Uruguay, and was a business fellow from Partners of the Americas and the U.S. Department of State Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs in 2011. Magdalena holds a BA in economics from Universidad de la República Oriental del Uruguay and a master's degree in business administration from NYU Stern. Hi, Magdalena, how are you?
Hi, Fernanda. I'm great. Enjoying summer in Washington, D.C.
So good. So can you give the audience a quick introduction about yourself and what you do and how you got where you are right now?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for the invitation. It's great to be here. It's fantastic to be talking about the venture capital industry in Latin America and the Caribbean. This is an industry that we are passionate about. I know we share that same passion, so it's fantastic to be here. My name is Magdalena Coronel. I'm Uruguayan. I'm Chief Investment Officer at IDB Lab. IDB Lab is the innovation lab and venture arm of the Inter-American Development Bank. We believe that through innovation, we can create impact. We can create impact in the lives of so many in Latin America and the Caribbean. We cover 26 countries, and we have been investing in the venture capital industry for quite some time, since late 90s. So very, very excited to be here.
Nice. Yeah, you guys do a lot in Latin America. And I've been following the work that you have done for a while now. I initially actually learned about IDB Lab through the We Exchange program with focus on women founders. So it's very cool as well. So, well, can you tell actually me more about like what different projects you have, like you guys have, for example, We Exchange, but I know you have other things in the IDB Lab.
Sure. So as the IDB Lab is the innovation lab and venture arm of the Inter-American Development Bank, we have been working with the venture capital industry and the entrepreneurial ecosystem for quite some time. And we do this looking for that kind of innovation that can create impact. And when we're talking about impact, we are talking about social and environmental impact. So we are talking about improving the lives of poor and vulnerable population in Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as reducing gender and diversity gaps, and helping the region face all the challenges that we are facing in terms of adaptation, mitigation, and regeneration around climate change. These are key topics of conversation for us, and everything we do is based on those principles. So what do we do exactly? So The lab actually provides financing, knowledge, and connections to help support innovation in the 26 countries that we cover. So Mexico all the way to Chile, including the Caribbean. So it's a very diverse geographic region with a very diverse level of entrepreneurial ecosystem and entrepreneurial services for innovators and entrepreneurs and founders across the region. So we work through different financial products to support our mission. So we work from developing entrepreneurial ecosystem, working with accelerators, incubators, universities, through technical cooperation, so through grant-like instruments, to be able to have the platform that the entrepreneurs need to develop innovation and take it all the way to create a startup and become a growth companies. So there we work with different players across each one of the ecosystems, understanding the ecosystems, each one of the ecosystems that we cover, and we have a team across the 26 countries to be able to develop exactly that, the platform, the net where the entrepreneurs can actually launch their innovation and actually become successful companies. So first, we develop the entrepreneurial ecosystem. Second, we have also technical cooperation and grant-like instruments to support very early stage innovation. We understand that when there's very early stage innovation, it might be risky for the private sector, or too risky for the private sector, I should say. So we need to be able to support this early stage innovation that sometimes is related to deep tech, to biotech, to ag tech, to health tech, and so on, to actually create those solutions that can close the gaps that we have in terms of development. And therefore, we focus very much in what I would say 5 different verticals. So solutions for ag tech, ag and food tech. So it's ag and food tech is extremely important in our region, as we provide a lot of the food that is being exported to other regions, and also to be able to solve our own food food security issues. So ag and food tech is very important to us. Fintech for financial inclusion. We have a very large proportion of our population that is still unbanked, and that is extremely important. Being able to bring our population into the financial system so they can have access to the different financial services is key for our conversation. So fintech and fintech related with the vision of financial inclusion is very important to us. Health tech. And after seeing the impact that COVID had, the COVID pandemic had across Latin America and the Caribbean, health tech is a very important conversation for us in terms of access to remote areas across Latin America and the Caribbean, access to health, basic service health is extremely important to us, and innovation there is key to be able to solve some deficiencies that sometimes public sector cannot actually cover. Fourth, education and skills, right? The skills of the future. We have seen after the pandemic the growth of digitalization across Latin America and the Caribbean, and that actually implies the need for new skills, right? So upskilling and reskilling are key topics in the conversation around development, being able to have structures that are flexible, structures that actually adapts to gig economy workers, that adapts to the gender diversity that we need to have, as well as provide those services around worker tech platforms for informal workers. We have a very large rate of informal workers across Latin America and the Caribbean, and therefore innovation and technology should be able to or could be actually a great solution for informal workers. Fifth, what we actually call essential services. And this is access to connectivity, mobility that are key for the inclusion of poor and vulnerable population in the economic development of Latin America and the Caribbean. So those 5 verticals are key topics for us, key areas of focus for us, and therefore early stage innovation in these 5 sectors, as well as with the other instruments that I will share in a couple of minutes, are actually points of interest for us. Then we work with the venture capital industry, right? So going towards the development of innovation to a startup and early stages of financing, is key that we have venture capital financing. If you look at the ratio of VC over GDP in Israel, you're talking about 1.9. In the States, you're talking about close to 1%, VC over GDP. In Latin America and the Caribbean, in average, VC over GDP of the whole region is 0.2%. So even though the industry has been growing, and we are talking about years like 2016, where the industry was closing around 500 million in deals, and last year we closed 8 billion. So the growth has been very, very important. We still have room to growth. We still have room to growth. And in that regard, IDB Lab has been a key investor for venture capital funds. We have invested in more than 100 venture capital funds. As of now, we have 55 venture capital funds actually actively investing in Latin America and the Caribbean. We invest between 3 to 5 tickets each year into 3 to 5 funds. So our investments in the venture capital industry are key for us, are key in the understanding of VC industry, is the one of the most important financial instruments to finance innovation, and therefore we need to be there. And we need to be there even in years like this one, even more in years like this one, where the liquidity for alternative assets as venture capital is lower than the previous years, and therefore it's more challenging to raise rounds at the level of the startups, as well as raising funds at the level of the fund managers. So we develop ecosystem, we support early stage innovation, then we support venture capital funds. And 2 years ago, we started investing directly into tech startups. And we started investing directly into tech startups because we want to give a signal into the private sector that you can create market returns with impact. So in these last 2 years, we have invested in 25 companies from Latin America and the Caribbean, from edtechs to worker techs to fintechs, so agtechs, health tech companies. So we are very, very proud of being investors in companies that are doing really well for the region, and actually providing solutions for the development issues that we have, but also are doing very well financially. So we are excited about that. We invest in Series A kind of rounds. We don't want to take room out of the private sector, so we follow venture capital funds. We don't lead rounds. We co-invest with VC funds across the region, and we are very proud of that. And last but not least, not all the companies actually need equity to growth. Not all the innovation is tech-based, and therefore we have loan and debt instruments to support companies that sometimes are in a later stage, and then they prefer to use debt so they don't get that so diluted, or they prefer to do lead because they are fintech that focus on lending and so on. So we have 150 loan operations now. We do a ticket around $2 million. And even in this kind of year where interest rates are high, where it's harder to get a loan, we need to be there more than ever.
Well, awesome. Thank you for giving me that overview. I think it was very clear to follow and understand the different instruments and like how you guys work in different areas. I definitely really like that. Well, I personally think that Latin American entrepreneurship is already driven by impact and because of the nature of the problems that exist in the region.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, well, that's why personally, I mean, I'm from Latin America, I'm from Uruguay, but I think it's also interesting to work with emerging markets because of that reason. There's so much opportunity to work with very like needed problems, like they're like healthcare or financial inclusion. I think those problems are really interesting. And that's great. I didn't know that you guys were also directly investing into startups. So that's news for me. So awesome. So, well, as we just talked, like you guys are really focused on promoting the sustainable development goals in Latin America. And so when it comes to the founder or the fund manager perspective, what are some difficulties or challenges that you guys have seen when it comes to balancing, the impact, the social, economic, and environmental impact and the profitability aspect? I know they're not like opposites and they align, but I'm sure like there must be sometimes some challenges when it comes to evaluating what options to take.
For sure. And what I would say is, and I think you put it really well, right? And in emerging markets, I think the focus of venture capital, even though it might not be, at the beginning, might not be driven through impact only, actually creates a lot of impact. And I would say that the biggest challenge, or one of the biggest challenge that GPs and founders have, is not being able to have the resources to measure the impact that they are generating. I would say probably the fact that we need to improve how we measure impact. We need to be able to systematize that conversation and bring that to the table as an attractive factor to actually get more investment is key in the conversation. So for each one of the investments that we do, we work with the founders or the GP to define certain indicators that we will follow across the years to understand the impact that they are doing. And I know that this can be intimidating because this actually brings a lot of work that sometimes an early stage startup might not have, or a GP is trying to understand how they will structure it. But actually measuring the impact that the startups and the VC community are generating, I think is key in the conversation for the next couple of years. It's even more challenging also when you add the climate dimension and how to measure from reduction of emissions to the regeneration that the company or the fund is creating through their investments. So I think it's part of the challenges that the industry needs to figure it out in the next couple of years. And I believe that LPs, limited partners that are development institutions should have a supportive role there.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Measuring, definitely. I think that's where I guess like analytics and having a lot of data, making sure that you have a very good data structure in your data infrastructure in your organization, in your startup or fund, that you can keep track of certain things. But definitely like measuring seems like a interesting challenge as well for the startups.
And I would also add another complexity that is it's extremely important how to measure and how we gather data. And it's extremely important to make sure that the algorithms that we are using actually do not have implicit biases. Right? So the fair and the ethic use of artificial intelligence and algorithms and the data that we gather is key in the conversation as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. So in terms of the landscape in the next 10 years, what do you think is going to happen? What are some trends that you've seen?
Sure. So I believe that looking back, the industry has grown a lot, right? We are talking about multiplying by 16 times the amount of investment in venture capital in Latin America and the Caribbean. Of course, these years are challenging years considering the macroeconomic situation, but we actually are seeing a positive trend, and we are seeing that the reductions in the industry that have been happening is actually part of like a worldwide effect. So what I believe we can expect for the next couple of years is an industry that is will get more and more relevance for sure. We hope that there would be more investment coming to Latin America and the Caribbean. For sure, unicorns and successful companies with the healthy financial healthy unit economics. That's key for the conversation, and it's key for the conversation and increasing M&As and IPOs. We were seeing in 2020, 2021 was not only an increase in venture capital funding, but also an increase in IPOs and M&A. And we need that whole cycle to make this industry successful and more appealing to other investors. So focus on M&A and exit opportunities are key to make sure that the industry is developing as a whole. What are the kind of challenges that I believe we still have and we need to face in the next couple of years? For sure, what we talk about, that the ratio of venture capital funding is still low. So an increasing in the ratio of the venture capital funding over GDP is the main challenge, but also we have challenge in terms of concentration. So most of the resources in the venture capital industry as of now are going to the largest economies in Latin America and the Caribbean. So Brazil, Mexico, Colombia, Chile, Argentina actually attracts most of the VC dollars that are close in Latin America and the Caribbean. So actually helping and supporting nascent ecosystems where innovation is actually being developed is extremely important to break that concentration in just larger economies and make sure that the whole region is actually growing in terms of VC funding. Second, sectors that the VC funding is landing. So most of the rounds are closed in fintechs. So only 7% of the almost $8 billion that were closed last year were actually allocated to healthcare, to health tech, ag tech, climate tech, and ed tech. So we still have a lot of concentration in fintech, and a lot of opportunities will be raising in terms of ed and worker tech, health tech, ag tech, and so on. So I believe like an increase in funding in these sectors is a trend that we will be seeing. Third, there's a concentration in certain business models. So most of the fintechs or most of the unicorns in fintech, if you take a look, are around payment system and structures, and places and payment systems. So I think like a diversification to new, more innovative business models is something that we're still hoping that will arrive. And last but not least, diversity. We need to see more diversity in terms of gender, in terms of ethnicity, in terms of race. I believe that only 22% of the fundings of the rounds of above $1 million last year were actually in companies that had one women founder, at least one women founder. So there's still so much that we need to improve there. So a more diverse industry actually speaks about different perspectives, potentially better financial returns, and I think is something that we need to target for sure.
Yeah, and on that last note, also like different having different founders in the market might also serve different customers, like different problems. So I really like that too. Okay, and then lastly, just this podcast is targeted towards like young investors or college students who are interested in Latin America. So what is some piece of advice that you would give us, like people like me who are trying to learn more?
Sure. Connect with the industry, connect with the local ecosystem, understand who are the players, understand who is investing across Latin America and the Caribbean. I think access to the different players in the ecosystem is key. So talking to each other, sharing knowledge is part of the conversation. So I would highly recommend the integration, the inclusion, the access to the community that is behind entrepreneurial ecosystems.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, thank you, Magdalena. This is a very interesting conversation. And thank you for giving me an overview of the IDB Lab. Very clear. And I think it's very interesting to think about impact and how we can support the entrepreneurship ecosystem in LatAm. And also, yeah, like what's next, right? Like what are some things that we gotta keep working on?
Sure. Thank you so much for inviting me. Great
Yeah.
to see you.
I don't know about you, but I really enjoyed listening to Magdalena's thoughts on the future of Latin America and learning more about how the IDB Lab supports entrepreneurship and innovation there. One of the things that I love about working with LatAm startups is that most of them are focused on solving present social or environmental issues without necessarily being an impact-focused startup. I think that's one of the coolest aspects of working in LatAm and also supporting the founders there. Thank you for listening today, and make sure to come back again next week.